Have you ever been grateful for a friend who maybe gave you a heads up about something that, I don't know, maybe it was awkward or uncomfortable at the time, but ultimately you're glad they gave you the heads up? Maybe something like, oh, dude, you got a little booger hanging out. Or, hey, this light's down. Or maybe even, oh man, I know, that guy is the worst. Oh, dude. Oh, he's standing right behind me, isn't he? Look, I get it. It's awkward for everyone involved. Nobody likes to be the person to tell somebody something like that, and nobody wants to be told, like, you got food in your teeth or there's ketchup on your shirt. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we're grateful that we have friends who can honestly tell us those things before we really embarrass ourselves. Now, let's think about this from the perspective of you needing to be the one to probably say something to a friend. Have you ever been in a position where you felt like you should say something to a friend and you weren't quite sure how to go about saying it or bringing it up or whatever? I mean, it's one thing to tell them that, you know, they've got something in their teeth. It's a completely different thing when you have to talk about something that's maybe a little bit bigger than that. Like maybe talking to them about a relationship that you know they probably shouldn't be in. Or when you feel like you've got to confront them about some decisions that they've been making lately that you know probably aren't the best for them. Or maybe even speaking up about something that you know is just going to get them in trouble if they don't stop. See, all those things feel completely different. How are we supposed to be a good friend and bring up stuff like that when we don't always know what to say or how to say it? When someone close to you is doing something that they shouldn't be doing, what are you supposed to say? Or maybe you've even had the thought like, it's none of my business, it's their life, let them do what they're gonna do. If your friends are doing things that, you know, their parents wouldn't be okay with, are you supposed to do anything? Or are you supposed to get involved? Is it really your place to say something about it? And if so, what do you say? Sometimes if we're honest, many of us would just really avoid the situation altogether, wouldn't we? But why? Maybe we don't want to ruin a friendship or make someone mad. Maybe we're doing or have done something similar in the past, and so we don't really feel like we have the right to bring this up or to say anything about it. Maybe we don't think that they'll listen. Or maybe we just don't know what to say at all. But maybe for some of you, let's be honest, you don't have this problem. You're on the opposite side of the spectrum. You have no problem calling things out for the way you see it. You have no problem confronting somebody or addressing them about the stuff that you see going on in their lives that shouldn't be. The problem with that though, and I've had to work on this a lot in my life because I fall into the latter group, is that in doing so, you may not always be doing it in the most loving way, or at least in a way that would make anybody want to listen to you. You just kind of come across as bossy and controlling. If you've ever wrestled with any of this stuff, the good news is you're not alone. We've all been there. We have all been in situations, we know what it feels like to feel like you need to say something, but not being exactly sure of what to say or how to say it. But what if there was a way that we could learn how to have the difficult conversations? If we could learn how to be both helpful and kind? What if we could have these kinds of conversations and not have it end up blowing up in our faces, but actually have something good happen from them? Here's the thing, I know that you want that for your relationships, I know I want that for mine, and nobody wants to be known as a hater. Everyone wants to be known and have a reputation for, kind of like we talked about last week, being all about love. So when it comes to making sure that you're the friend that looks out for your friends and helps bring them up, how do we go about doing that in the right way? So last time we met, we talked about how we all want to be known for and remembered as people who are known for their love, who have a reputation for treating others well, respecting others, putting others before ourselves. We know that love is really the biggest and the bestest world changer. If we want to be kingdom workers, if we want to be people that change things in our own worlds, then we have to be all about love. Love changes things so much more than hate. So if we want our lives to be all about love, then how do you handle it when somebody you know or somebody who's close to you is doing something that is literally bad or dangerous or maybe even a little bit stupid? The message we indirectly hear a lot of the time is just avoid it. Don't say anything because it's not your business, and who are you to judge? It's their lives. I think deep down we all know that that just isn't the best answer. So how are we supposed to handle it, and what are we supposed to do when this involves the people who are closest to us? Well, Paul actually talks about this very same thing. I know, very relevant. They really knew a lot 2,000 years ago. Turns out when you follow Jesus, you actually have a lot of really cool answers. But Paul wrote a letter to the church in Galatia, and that's modern day Turkey. You can go and visit there now. This is a real place, and Paul was talking to real people all those years ago about this very same issue, because while technology has changed and while the human race has advanced in the way that we do things and our infrastructure, who we are at the core, that still really hasn't changed. Our motives haven't really changed, and we still deal with a lot of the same issues. So Paul is writing to them, and here's what he says. He says, "Dear brothers and sisters, if another believer is overcome by some sin, you who are godly should gently and humbly help that person back onto the right path. And be careful not to fall into the same temptation yourself." So here's where messages collide a little bit from what our culture usually says. See, our culture usually says, don't judge other people. And usually when somebody is involved in sin, that's the first thing they say back to you when you are trying to help them by pointing out something they probably shouldn't be doing. They say, "Hey, don't judge me." Or, "Hey, it's only God's job to judge, not yours." But here Paul seems to say, well, no, actually, part of being a member of Christ, a part of the church, the community of believers, if you are part of Christ's body, then we all kind of are accountable for each other. Paul is basically saying, since you all have the same values and you all have the same goal of following Jesus and making your lives all about love, then actually you shouldn't just avoid it. You shouldn't just sit back. You should actually help them, build them up, and bring them back on track. In other words, what he's saying, and this is where most of us stop, is that not only should you be there to say something when you feel like you probably should, when you're seeing a friend go down a wrong path or make some decisions that are not God's best for their life. Not only should you say something about it, and he puts the responsibility on us as believers, but you should go a step further and you should actually help them get back on track. He's saying that it's actually our responsibility to not only say something, which is sometimes the only thing we're really good at, and that's not a good thing, but we should also be a part of helping them get back onto track, put our money where our mouth is, and actually walk with them rather than just throw up roadblocks in their face and saying, "Stop doing this." Now, here's what Paul isn't saying. He's not saying that you are personally responsible for your friend's decisions or your family member, or whoever it is that we're referring to. Their choices are not your responsibility, but it is your responsibility to look out for them and be there with them. Be there for them. He's also saying you shouldn't put yourself in a position where you too are susceptible to the same kind of temptations and failures that they're going through. You should be wise, and that's where wisdom becomes a critical factor when it comes to these conversations and in these situations of any kind. The point is that, according to Paul, with gentleness and humility, we can be people that help our friends and the people close to us who are struggling with poor decisions to get on the right path, to help them know that they're not alone in wrestling with the things that they're wrestling with. Paul goes on in the next verse to say, share each other's burdens, and in this way, obey the law of Christ, the law of Christ being the law of love. And this is something that if you've been around me for very long at all, you probably heard me pray at the end of a sermon many times, help us to encourage one another and build one another up and carry each other's burdens. And it comes straight from this verse, because I truly believe that unless we are willing to walk the extra mile with our friends and help carry their burdens, we're not going to get very far. We need the people around us who show us love to be able to help us get through our own struggles. So how do we get people back on track? Just tell them what they're doing wrong all the time? Just avoid the issue like it's not actually happening? No, carry their burdens with them. Think about it this way. Whenever you're in weights class or you're in a sport that requires you to lift weights and you're in the gym and you're exercising, you're pumping the iron or getting swole, there's somebody called a spotter, especially like if you're on the bench press or something and you're pushing the weight bar up. You got a spotter who isn't doing the work for you, but they're there to catch you in case you start to, lose your strength, and that way the bar doesn't fall on your neck and you die, you know. So they're hovering over you, and they've got their hands out, they're ready to help you and lift up the bar in case you start to give out. And when you're lifting those weights and you're running out of strength, you can say, hey, spotter, spotter, spotter. And when you start to lose and you're not gonna be able to push that bar back up again, they help you and they carry the weight with you to get it back where it's supposed to be. And it's the same way with this concept. It's not just your job to sit there and say, hey, you should lift that higher. You're gonna drop it on yourself. You're gonna hurt yourself. No, go on, just push, lift. Look, you can do it. Yeah, oops, you didn't do it. Well, I tried. No, that would be crazy. Your job is to spot, to help carry, I don't know if there's any other way I can say this, carry each other's burdens. Show up in each other's lives and be there for each other. That is what we're supposed to do to help get each other on the right path together. Paul wrote this because he cared deeply about the church, and specifically the church in Galatia in this instance, but it applies to all of us today. I think that's why we still read out of it and study his letters to this very day. But he knew that sometimes the most loving thing that you can do is not always the easiest thing, but we owe it to one another to sometimes say the hard things and do the hard things in order to be there and show up for one another in each other's lives. We don't just point fingers, we share burdens. And I love that he said that we should be gentle and humble. In other words, it's not just about the words we say, but how we say them. Being kind, helpful, and encouraging helps to show people that we truly just want what's best for them and that we're acting out of love, not out of spite, not out of hatred, not out of I told you so, but purely just out of the interest of helping other people grow. In fact, a good filter that you should always use when approaching situations like this is through the question of, am I showing love in the way I'm going about this? Am I showing love in the way that I'm treating this person? You all know what a filter is. You use it to make coffee. If you're like me and you make like a dozen cups a day, the coffee grinds go in the filter and put hot water through it, and the hot water soaks up the coffee, and oh man, this is making me want coffee right now. But then the water comes out as coffee and it doesn't get any of the grinds in it, so you don't choke while you're drinking or have to chew what you're drinking, because that's also gross. Or you know what a filter is based off your extensive knowledge of social media and photo editing on Instagram or Snapchat. You can put a filter of some kind, whether it's an animation or just some kind of color correcting thing or whatever. You know what I'm talking about. But when you have the filter on, then everything that the camera shows within that filter looks different. And the filter that you should use is love. When approaching any of these situations, when approaching hard situations, when approaching easy situations, when approaching conversations that are not always the most simple to have, approach them through the filter of love. Say, I'm doing this because I care about somebody, not because I'm trying to be right, not because I'm trying to be a know-it-all, not just because I'm trying to flex my Jesus muscles, but because I actually care about the other person's well-being. So my encouragement for you this week is to let love be your filter. And here's a couple ways that you can do that. First off, let love be the filter for your involvement. How well do you know this person? Is it just somebody that you're ticked off at and you just want to point things out and walk away? Probably don't say anything. Is it somebody that you're actually close to and that you actually have the capacity to walk with them when it comes to this? Maybe your lives cross paths in a number of ways. Maybe you're on the same team or you're in the same classes or whatever it is. Maybe even the same small group. Are you a part of this person's life enough that you can actually walk with them with the things that you're addressing and bringing up? This provides a gut check for your motives and reasons for wanting to get involved in a situation. If it's to truly help somebody and you feel like you have a role you could play, and even if you just let them know, hey, I know you're going through this and I'm here for you, whatever you need, even if you don't know what that is, then that's better than nothing. But again, check your motives. Make sure that your involvement in the situation would really just be what's best for them and for the situation, not just because you want to be right or prove a point. And I know this can be a little bit tricky to figure out, so it's always helpful to process these kinds of things with maybe a small group leader or a parent or a coach or somebody who can give you a little bit more insight into these kinds of things before you just jump head in and take a lot of people off and actually cause more damage than good. So if the filter of love permits you to be involved in this situation, then you're ready for the next step. And that is, number 2, to let love be the filter for the words that you use. Whenever you do have to have these conversations with somebody, and whenever you do have to bring it up in a situation, then Ask yourself, how would I want somebody to bring this up in my life? Would I want them to just say how it is? Would I want them to beat around the bush? Probably not. I know sometimes we beat around the bush to be nice and stuff, but you can be nice and loving and be direct at the same time. It all is within your tone and the way that you approach the situation to begin with. Maybe you can start with, hey, there's something difficult that I'm not really sure how to bring up, but I feel like I should. And I hope you hear my heart that I'm just saying this because I care about you. This is what I've noticed, and I feel like I wouldn't be a good friend if I didn't say something. And then once you've taken that step, you're ready for the third thing, which is let love be the filter for your actions and reactions. We've kind of touched on this a little bit already, but if you have friends who are struggling to make the right decisions or to stay away from certain things or certain temptations, then you probably know that they might need a little more than just your words for help. They might actually need you to show up in their lives in different ways or in more ways. And I understand that sometimes a little more work when you'd rather just sit around and play Fortnite, but sometimes being there for people is the best way that you can show up in their lives when it comes to this kind of stuff. And even if you don't have a driver's license or you can't actually physically meet with somebody right now, we have technology that allows us to be able to connect with people, wherever they're at, pretty much any time. So that's no excuse. And no matter what the situation is, if you let love be the filter for your actions and your reactions, then you have the ability to have a profound impact on somebody's life. In fact, another writer from the New Testament says it this way: if anyone is losing their faith or going down a wrong path and somebody saves them, brings them back from that, then they have altered the course of their entire life. They've saved them from an eternity of separation from God. Ultimately, when we let love be our filter, we wind up sharing the burdens of those that we love. Just imagine how different all your relationships would be, your schools, this church. Imagine how different things would be if we could address one another out of love. If we could let love be the filter for all of our words and all of our actions. If we most accurately reflected Christ in every situation. Letting love be our filter first will keep us from allowing our own egos and our heads to get in the way of Christ's work in our lives, which I believe His work and His saving power has the opportunity to change the entire world. It has before, and it can happen in your world. So as we wrap up this week's message, let's all let love be the filter in which we handle all of our relationships. That we can be there and show up in one another's lives in ways that when you have to have those tough conversations, they can give you the benefit of the doubt because you've shown up in their lives before and they know that you just want what's best for them. Until next week, I look forward to seeing you all again, and make sure you follow us on Instagram or YouTube if you haven't already. We'd love to connect with you there. If you have any questions or you want to be connected to a small group leader or just even have this conversation in a little bit of a deeper way, then feel free to reach out on those platforms. Get a hold of us. We can help hook you up with a small group leader. We can help connect you to people who care about you and who can help you carry your own burdens as well. I love you guys, and we'll see you next week.